Welcome to Men Pursuing More. I'm your host, Roger Maupin. I believe every man has the potential to push past his limits and strive for something greater. Whether you're a former athlete who is looking for what's next, a professional pushing through the daily grind, or someone simply ready to break through life's toughest challenges, if you're ready to step into the pursuit of something more, your pursuit begins now. All right, welcome back to Men Pursuing More podcast. I'm your host, Roger Maupin. I want to welcome Rhys Lloyd to the podcast. And Rhys, since we know each other from years back at Eastview High School, let's start off with your journey growing up in England and then eventually making your way to Apple Valley, Minnesota, and then attending Eastview High School.
Yeah, strange one. I grew up in Dover, which is southeast coast of England. Some people might know it, where the White Cliffs are. I spent obviously 15 years there, so I've actually spent more time in America now than I have in England, but still got the accent. I had a really good upbringing. I spent a lot of time with my parents and was really big into sports and followed my dad everywhere, watching him play and getting to go into the locker rooms after games and just seeing that environment. It was just something that really impacted me and my growing up. And yeah, and then crazy enough, fast forward, and here I am in Charlotte, North Carolina. It's just a crazy journey.
So what was the decision for your family to move from England to Apple Valley, Minnesota, and attend, I know, Eastview High School? I believe your ninth grade year study. And just what was the reason? How was that as like that transition of moving to another country?
Yeah, so my dad played pro back home in England and was in semi-retirement. He was coaching, and the team that he was coaching was short players that day. And he said, "Oh, listen, I'll play and make up the numbers," and tore his ACL. But back then, tearing an ACL was not a 3 to 6 month recovery. It was a long sort of haul, and he was laid up in a hospital bed and just trying to get everything right again. And he was reading a magazine called 442, which was it's a pretty big soccer magazine back home in Europe, really. And there was an article about the fact that America wanted English coaches or European coaches to come over. The World Cup in '94 had just happened here. So soccer has really taken off to the next sort of level in America. And my dad just said, you know what, I'll give it a go, because it was only 3 months a year. It was basically during the summer months, and they located him to Minnesota. He moved it to Apple Valley, stayed with a family in Apple Valley for 3 months and coached. And he did that for 2 years. And then after the second year, they offered him a full-time role with the state of Minnesota, as well as with the club that he was coaching at, to run the whole program. And yeah, it's a strange transition, because I remember when he came home the second time and he said to my mum, "Listen, we're moving to America." And I was 14, almost 15 at the time. And at that age, I think you think to yourself that the world is ending, because it's 14, 15. It's like you're never going to make friends again. And you're moving to a different country and all these different sort of things go through your head. But sport was always a constant in my life, and it's always been something that's helped me in any situation make friends. And so when I moved here, and obviously at the time I was a pretty good soccer player, which helps when you're trying to fit in and you become one of the main guys, so to speak. Everybody says, "Oh, Rhys is a good player," so then everybody wants to hang out with you, and then over time you weed out the people that are riding the coattails as opposed to just being genuine people. So it was a difficult transition. I think my sister struggled certainly more with it, because she was never really an athlete. She did track and field through school, but it was not something that she was really into. And so she moved back to England after her senior year at Eastview. She only did 2 years at Eastview, and that was right when the school was opening up. She moved back to England and then eventually came back out to the States after a few years living back home. So that was an adjustment as well, not having her around. Obviously, my parents were always used to us being a family. We were a really close family. So she moved back to England and pursued her dreams, and now she's back here. So
when you were first at Eastview High School, What was it like at the beginning? Because it's different that students transfer from another high school and they may know a few, maybe, hey, I played against so and so, I know so and so, or I have a few
Yeah,
friends at that school, but you're coming from a whole nother country, so you knew no
yeah,
one. So what was that like at first?
yeah. It was eye opening. It was a different world. I came from a background where you were school uniforms, everything was not regimented, but it was very much like old school, probably similar to private schools out here where you have to wear a school uniform, you have to, everything's by the book and everything. I remember coming out here for a visit in January, which is a terrible time if you think about it, to sell your family on a place to live, to take two kids and a wife to Minnesota in January, because you get off the plane and the nose hairs crunch because it's freezing cold and it's just. And I love cold weather, but that was a different level of cold. I went to, I forget what the middle school is, right around the corner from Eastview.
Was that Scott Highland?
Scott Highland. Yeah, I went there for a day. I basically shadowed the family that my dad had been staying with. They're the same kid my age, Jason Riga. I don't know if you remember that name. And I followed him in for the day. And I was just in shock about the, like, people wearing their own clothes and the way they went about going to classes and just being in the classrooms and having your own desk, even like that would just, it's stuff that you only see in a movie. And now I'm standing there with my eyes and my mouth wide open, just going, this is just different. But listen, it's like everything, adjustments going through life. It took a little bit, but I think it was, again, the sport thing. I always go back to that. That was the one thing that was always consistent to me. And it didn't matter where you were in the world, it's the same language. It's kind of like music. It's you just know that there's people that are like-minded, and I just really threw myself into the sports side of it. And then the school thing was that second part of it, which I know is probably not what people want to hear, but the school was never really my strong point. It was a means to an end in a way to get where I wanted to go.
So tell us about how, because some of the listeners may be wondering about how was soccer at that time different from how you played it in England compared to playing at Eastview High School or just playing here in the States?
It was different. I think the one thing that I can say that was probably better than anything in England, unless you're playing at the very top level, was the facilities over here, second to none. I coach now and I listen to kids complain about certain things. I'm like, you guys have no idea. I sound like my dad, basically. I'm like, you have no
Mhm.
idea what it was like back then. But the culture is completely different. Soccer is not it's getting better. And it definitely has grown over the years over here, but it's just soccer in Europe, in England, it is a religion. It's like people eat, sleep, and breathe it. It's not, it will ruin you. It's kind of like the NFL. It will ruin your weekend. It will ruin your week until the team plays the following week. It's a different way of life. The families, the kids will take it so seriously over there. Whereas over here, I think kids like the idea of becoming a professional athlete or a college athlete, but I don't think they actually understand what it takes. And that takes time, I think, but it is one of those things where, man, I remember coming over here I was coming in as a freshman. Back then I was tiny. I was not, I looked like my dad. And if anybody knows my dad, he's not the biggest of stature as a man, but I looked like him. And I played one game against, I want to say it was Prior Lake. We won 6-1. I scored one, I had 5 assists, and then I had to go back home to England because of my visa. My family visa, we had to go back to England, and it was right when Princess Diana actually passed away. So I was over there at that point, and I literally was in no man's land. I spent, I don't know, what felt like a long time back home. I missed the entire season because of my visa stuff. But the level was different. I came from a culture of playing at Chelsea, which is a Premier League team. I've played at their sort of academy level, and I played locally doing like the ODP stuff back home, the equivalent of. And then you come over here, and I basically just strolled around and I could do whatever I want, which is not a good thing because you get bad habits from doing stuff like that. But yeah, it's just completely different. It's a different way of life back home compared to here.
So share with the listeners, you shared a little bit about playing soccer. You became a high-level soccer player in Minnesota at the high school level. And then you're eventually becoming the kicker for Eastview High School. Just share a little bit about the soccer, how you became the kicker for Eastview High School. And
Yeah, I spent obviously all my life playing soccer. I was always good at quote unquote kicking a ball. It's something that I was, even as a young kid, I was obsessed with kicking a ball against the wall and learning different ways of striking it and all that. And I used soccer as my outlet. And so having the opportunity to play football was something that I'd never even thought of or planned of. I used to do track and field in the spring season, and I use that as more of a fitness tool for me to get more endurance, be faster, all those things, because for soccer. And we went down to Disney World of Sports in Orlando for a spring break trip, the whole track team. And they had the NFL, it was called the NFL Extreme Challenge. And they had the 40-yard dash and the agility drills, quarterback challenges, but they also had a field goal post there with a wooden cutout board with a picture of a team trying to block your kick. And we had the afternoon after we had done our track practice in the morning, we had the afternoon there just allocated to our team. So we spent the afternoon there, and I was just messing around like everybody was doing. I was just kicking footballs barefoot because at the time I only had my track spikes and my flip-flops. And Coach Sherwin, which obviously you know very well, he was the head football coach, but he's like most schools, most coaches will do multiple sports. So he was also the track coach. He helped out with track, and he said, would you be interested in kicking? And my first response was, yeah, as long as it doesn't affect my soccer schedule. And so obviously football being played on a Friday night, soccer was always Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday morning. So I went into the following season, my junior year, and just went after it. I didn't know what I was doing. I just saw a ball and kicked it. My first ever game was against Eden Prairie. And I remember them dressing me in the gym beforehand, putting pads in places where I'm like, that doesn't feel right. And it was just a really weird experience. But it was one of those things where, you know, after a couple of games, I'm like, yeah, I'm enjoying it. It's just another team. Again, it's sports. So I knew a lot of the guys anyway, just being in the school and being social with them. Yeah, I went into sort of the end of junior year, going into my senior year, really enjoying the two sport athlete mentality, even though I wasn't really practicing with the team. I'd practice soccer and then I'd run over the fields, like 2 fields over, and throw a helmet on and then kick maybe 10 field goals. And then I'd be good for Friday night and just go through it. And I never really took it seriously enough to think that there was anything at the end of it. It was just more of, hey, listen, I'm a 2-sport athlete at school. I'm enjoying life. And 2 years later, I'm moving on with football, and soccer became the secondary, which is heartbreaking, but that was the way it was supposed to be.
Yeah, tell us about that journey since high school. Then I know you attended Rochester Community College and then eventually the University of Minnesota. And like you just said, there was kind of a challenge there because I know you had a lot of your heart in soccer, and here you're going in the direction of football. So share with the listeners about that.
Yeah, so I had quite a few college scholarship opportunities for soccer, and just never really had the desire to go to college, to be honest. It was not something that was on my radar. I didn't take any of the SATs or the ACTs. I was semi-advised not to take them from people within the school because I had no intent of going to play a sport. And then I was enrolling at the Brown Institute, which is obviously the technical college, to do some graphic design major stuff. And that actual day that I'd gone into the school to do a tour of it and look at the classes, I got a phone call from Chuck Seaford, he was at the time, I think he was like the athletic director / one of the football coaches at Rochester Community College. And he had just said, listen, I've been on the phone with Vic Adamley, who was my eventual coach at Minnesota. They're basically a sister school to Minnesota. And we'd love for you to come down and kick for 2 years and then transfer to Minnesota. And so I had a long conversation with my dad in the basement of our house over a few adult beverages, and I just was like, I don't know if I want to do it. My love for soccer is so big at the time. Felt like I was selling my soul to go and play a different sport. But listen, it was ultimately the right decision. And then I went to Rochester for 2 years, which was like an in-between of high school but you're still living a college life. Played there for 2 years, traveled the state of Minnesota and played in 2 bowl games and got All-American and all that sort of stuff, and managed to transfer to Minnesota 2 years later. They held their word up, and I went to Minnesota and just really loved everything about it. It was such an easy transition for me from a sports perspective and socially as well.
So now you're going to the University of Minnesota and you're on a scholarship at the University of Minnesota, coming in as what was it like coming in as a junior compared to coming in maybe as a sophomore or maybe a freshman? Now you're coming in as a junior.
Yeah, it was, I think it was very similar to my experience from England to America. Obviously, like a lot of those kids in Apple Valley would have gone to middle schools together and known each other growing up and then transferring school to school. And so everybody's had that relationship prior to. I just came in cold, not knowing anybody, but everything just worked out in Minnesota. Again, it was one of those things where everything lined up. Dan Nystrom, who was the kicker there, that was his senior year. So he had finished. So they had brought in, I think there was 2 redshirt freshmen and then another kid that they had brought in. And so I'm going in with a scholarship, but not really knowing if I'm, in my head I'm playing, but not really knowing, just because there's obviously a pecking order and people have been there for a little while. And I walked in the door and the first practice, I just did really well. And it was one of those things that ever since then, it was like, can you punt? I was like, yes, I can punt. Okay, you can do that too. And it was just, they kept adding things on my plate. And yeah, it was a surreal moment because my school side of life was I was never an academic. It's not that I wasn't smart enough. I just didn't like school. I know there's a lot of people out there probably frowning upon me, but I was never an academic. My school was the fuel for my sports. That was really the byproduct of it. Everywhere I went to was for sport and everything else was secondary. I had that sort of delusion of I'm going to become a professional athlete, not knowing that there are obviously levels and the percentages are extremely low, but I didn't care. I'm like, that's what I wanted to do. And I went for it. And Minnesota was the same. I really struggled with the school side of it, the time management, the responsibility of, listen, you're on your own. It was nice being that I was 25 minutes from my mum and dad on a weekend where I could go home and get a proper cooked meal and have my mum do my laundry and all that kind of stuff. And then it got to a point where I was taking some of the guys from the team home, and we had, like, to the point where we almost had 2 or 3 cars driving down to my mum and dad's at the weekend. But I love that transition, and not the sort of, I've always thrived when people go, listen, there's a small chance or you can't do it. It's almost like a gamble for me. And I'm like, yeah, let's do it. I can tell you right now, I'll prove you wrong. And that sort of happened basically throughout my entire career.
So you were mentioning about you not only are a kicker, but you're a punter too. Did you ever punt before then? Did you ever punt at Eastview High School or the Rochester Community College?
I did. Yeah, I did everything from high school.
Yeah.
And listen, punting for me from high school was catch it and kick it. There was no like the right drop and understanding spirals and spinning. Yeah. It was more of like just going off of my natural soccer technique of see ball, kick ball sort of thing. And it was, so and obviously in high school, the long snappers are not really trained to be long snappers. It was just chuck it back, catch it wherever it is. And he's jumping all over the place to catch it, to kick it. Then you get to college, obviously it's very refined, and the snappers have got like half the quarter turn of rotation when they snap it back to where the laces lands. It's pretty incredible when a lot of people don't think that snappers are like that. They just chuck it back. But there is like, they figured out where to put the ball in order to get the right spin when it comes back. So when you're catching it, it's already there for you on a plate. So yeah, punting was something I did in high school. I did it in college for both schools from Rochester and Minnesota.
Well, share with the listeners about and walk us through your journey making to the NFL. So going from the University of Minnesota into the NFL and some of the maybe highlights, challenges along the way as a kicker in the NFL.
I went from Minnesota to the Ravens my rookie year. I went undrafted. I got a phone call in the 6th or 7th round, I believe it is, saying that we might take you, but if we don't, we're going to pick you up straight away after free agency. I was on the golf course with my dad at that point down in Florida. And sure enough, the draft ends, and within 2 or 3 minutes, I get a phone call from the Ravens and they want to sign me. And my signing bonus was them paying for my visa. So it's a lot of people get all these on the news, all these flashy contracts and big money, and they paid for my visa, which for me was great. I had no intent of going back home to England. So I went into the Ravens and unfortunately didn't make the team that year. And came away deflated. It's probably actually one of the first times where I'd been rejected, to be honest, in a sense of not making a team. I was always a star. I was always one of the better players on the team, and I've been very honored and privileged to be that. But that was the first time that I felt like I was good enough, but it just was a numbers game. I went in there with Matt Stover, who was a veteran kicker and class act, and he was incredible. But he was getting older, and I thought maybe I can have a chance here, and it just didn't work out. And I moved back to, at this point, my mum and dad moved down to Tampa, Florida. So I moved back down there, and I basically become a stay-at-home kid again. I was 22 and just living at home, and mum was making dinners, and I was just laying around the house, and I wasn't doing anything. It was quite sad, actually, looking back on it. And my mum actually worked at a place called Saddlebrook, which is a resort in Tampa, and they had a sports center. It was tennis and golf, but one of the guys there used to train a lot of the NFL guys in the off season, and she used to work there as a person behind the desk in the lobby. And she just spoke to the guy and said, "Listen, would you be interested in potentially training my son and see how it goes?" So I just started training and basically became a professional athlete. I'd got everything I'd got at that point was really just natural ability and not really working hard enough on the other side of it, and just went into that world of, I'm committed, I'm doing 2-a-days, and I got an opportunity to go to NFL Europe, which was a random thing that I got a phone call from my agent saying, "Listen, there's a tryout down in Tampa for NFL or NFL Europe kickers." But back then, what they used to do was teams used to allocate guys like, for example, Minnesota Vikings, they would say, "Hey, listen, I've got a kicker. We really like him, but he's not experienced enough yet, but we need to go and get him game film. So we're going to allocate him to the NFL Europe." Excuse me. They used to have the Vikings logo on the jerseys and everything, which meant that you were a big deal in NFL Europe. And I went there out of 12 kickers. I was the only one that was not allocated by a team. So my percentages, and I think there was 6 or 8 teams, my percentages of making that was non-existent, because typically those allocations carry a lot of weight in the sense of, you need to take this guy. And I went into that camp and just destroyed everybody. And very fortunate that 2 of the guys that were on that NFL Europe team I had known from college. One of them was Aaron Hosack, who I played with at Minnesota, and the other guy was Matt Sinclair, who I played against at Illinois, but I spent my rookie year with him at the Ravens, so I had a really good relationship with him. And they were at the tryout, and they said to the coach, and they did this mini draft system. And when I say it, that doesn't sound grand, because they did it in the hotel lobby with all the guys standing there, and it's quite like an intimidating thing. You've got 12 kickers and 12 punters, and they're like, "Okay, first pick, Frankfurt Galaxy's taking Rhys Lloyd and Carl Basler." And I was like, "What?" And so I had basically stolen a spot from one of those guys. But it was the best thing that happened, because I then spent another 3 or 4 months in a different country and on my own again. But it was all about just being an athlete. There was no school involved. It was learning how to grow up and do all the things that you should do as an adult. And still had a lot of fun doing it. And I was living a college student life, getting paid, but not having to do the school. It was great. And I think that experience really changed me. And at that time, I just met my now wife, and because we had the same agent, and it was one of those things where everything just started coming together. And Ravens picked me back up, and I spent a year with them. And then the very last game of the season, I got traded to Carolina, which is where I spent the next 4 years, majority of my career.
So listeners are wondering, like, what is it like to be, I know there's a lot of pressure on kickers in the NFL. What is it like to be a kicker in the NFL?
I think that's a question that would probably change with a lot of guys. There's a quote that my mum did an interview with, I think it was the Pioneer Press back in Minnesota, when I played in Minnesota, and they basically asked her what it was like to have Rhys and what's he like as a person. She said he's so laid back that he would fall over. And I think that really translated into my sports. I was a perfectionist in a way, but I also recognized that things were never going to be perfect all the time. And I had a way of dealing with those situations where I was just like, oh, that's it. Because once that ball leaves your foot, there's nothing you can do to change it. And it sounds like so simple, but I never really, as soon as I hit that ball, if I missed it, I'd be upset. Don't get me wrong, but I would take that moment from the time I kicked it to the time I came off the field. I would bad language, be really upset with myself, all this kind of things. But as soon as I touched that white line again to go over to the bench, it was done because I couldn't change it. And if I really let myself stew on that kind of stuff, it would have ruined me because I'm not a big thinker when it comes to technique. It was very natural to me that I'd had coaches that tried to change stuff and all this sort of stuff. And ultimately, the reason why I got there was because of the way I did it. And so I just let things go really easily. I've always been like that with everything in my life. And I feel like it makes my life a little bit easier because there's a lot of things that people stress about. And I just go, not worth it. It's just not worth it. There's guys that are like mentally just, you can tell when guys mentally lose it as kickers. I watch them. You can tell by body language. You can just tell by they're trying to do different things technically. It's like, you would know, obviously, with coaching basketball as well, it's you miss one shot. Do you just say, oh, it's one shot? Or do you go, I missed it, so I need to change my technique? And then you start going down this rabbit hole of one thing leads to another, and all of a sudden you've completely, the technique part of it may not be the part, it's mental. So I used to have days practicing with my dad, and he was my kicking coach, basically, because he obviously raised me and saw me kick a ball, and he knows the ins and outs of striking a ball. And there'd be days where I'd go and practice in the off season. I'd go out and hit 5 balls and I'm like, I'm done. And I'm like, it's not happening today. And the first few times he just couldn't understand. He's like, yeah, but you need to push through it to get better. And I'm like, no, because I'm going to start changing things and I don't want to change things. So that would be, I'd say I'd go and do something else. I'd go and work out or something, still do something productive, but it was not something that I concentrated on. So yeah, I think the kicker lifestyle, you're very in the corner, quiet. Everybody has this perception that the kicker, he's the guy in the corner, no one speaks to him. And I was the complete opposite because I was a soccer player. So I'm Mr. Sociable. I wanted to be involved with everybody and talking. And that was my way of dealing with stuff. If I wasn't that way, then I don't know if I'd made it as far as I had.
Share with the listeners, what are some highlights about playing in the NFL? Because a number of these listeners have never played in the NFL. I know they're watching games, but just some highlights of like playing in the NFL.
Listen, I never had the lengthy career or the success that, Ben that you had on, who's one of my closest friends. He obviously won a Super Bowl and all that sort of stuff. I remember particular moments in games. San Diego, in 2008, I had 5 kickoffs. One of them went through the uprights, and back then the kickoff was further back. So that was a statement game for me because it was my first year with Carolina and they'd taken a chance on me. So I went into that game with the mentality like, I'm going to prove that you made the right decision. But that year I won an NFL record for the most touchbacks in an NFL season. And I think that looking back on it, I didn't really care. They gave me a ball after the game and had it printed up, and that's at my mum and dad's house. And I think I don't keep any of my memorabilia at the house. The only thing I've got here is my college helmet. It was something that I did and it wasn't who I was, but the NFL highlights were, for me, the personal things that I went through with people or with my wife. I had a lot of positives and I probably could have had a longer career, but ultimately I think I did it the way I wanted to do it. And the feeling that you get when you run out of a tunnel and that many people, it's just different. You can't explain it. It's a weird feeling. I go back every year for alumni weekends and I stand out on the field and you almost have this imposter syndrome when you stand there. You go, this doesn't seem like I did. Actually genuinely think to myself, I don't remember doing half of this, because it was just something that you did. When you're doing it and you're in it, you don't actually reflect on it. I wish I would have at the time, because the journey part of it is the biggest part of it, not the destination. And I look back on those years and it's pretty incredible. A kid from England, no intention of playing any other sport than soccer, and here I am kicking in the NFL. So my highlights are the people and the experiences. It's not necessarily one particular kick. Or the San Diego game to me was probably the one game where I look back, and maybe against Chicago, kicking against Devin Hester, who's now an all-time Hall of Famer return guy. And I had an argument with my kicking coach that week because he was like, we're not kicking to him. And I was like, screw that, I'm kicking to him. And he's not bringing it out because it'd be a touchback every time. And that's exactly what I did. And that's the side of me where I'm like, no, I'll take a challenge. I like it. Let's do it.
Now, take us back to, just to stay on the football theme just for a few more minutes, about highlights when you played for the University of Minnesota, because I'm a big Iowa Hawkeye fan. I grew up in Iowa. And I know the rivalry between Minnesota and Iowa.
Oh, you're gonna bring that up right after you just absolutely trounced us. That's nice.
Oh, I know. That was embarrassing day.
Yeah, you're not kidding.
Oh, we won't talk about that.
Good.
Just some highlights from playing for the Gophers.
Yeah, listen, everybody talks about Wisconsin game, the game-winning kick. I'm reminded of that every single year on ESPN rivalry week. It's without fail. I get text messages with videos from friends and family and all that. You're on ESPN again. It's one of those immortal moments because I celebrated like a soccer player. I kicked, like, that whole day was incredible. That's the only game, quite frankly, that Minnesota cares about. You could go 1-10 as long as that one's against Wisconsin. It's not that you've had a good year, but you can make it in your mind. You can say that's satisfactory. And that game was a back and forth. We had our second string quarterback in. A lot of things weren't really going our way, and we ended up getting tight. It was a tied game, and call a timeout. I go out to go and kick, and right before I go out and kick, the other team's talking a lot, trying to get in my head and all this. And I just strolled out there. And as I was walking out there, I was talking with my holder, Brian Cooper, the third string quarterback. And I was like, man, this is going to be a good night. And he said, what do you mean? I said, I'm going to make this and we're going to have some fun tonight. And he just looked at me and I was just like, let's go. It was only a 34-yard. Listen, it wasn't anything special. But obviously the moment was that. And then they called a timeout, which I know in terms of what people think freezing the kicker or icing the kick or whatever you want to call it, that helped me because I was jacked up, ready to go and kick. And in your mind, you're thinking, are they going to call a timeout? Are they not? As soon as you start thinking about that, you're not concentrating on your job. So I went out there with the mindset of I'm going out to kick this ball and then I'm going to go and try and find the axe wherever it is. They called a timeout. And normally I would have stayed out there, but I just said, yeah, I'm just going to stroll around. So I'm literally just walking around on the field. And one of their guys came over, and my dad talks about this a lot. One of their guys came over to me and he is yelling at me and talking all sorts of stuff, as you can imagine. And I just turned round to him. I told him with some colorful language to stop. And I just gave him the talking hand gestures to say, you can talk all you want, but it's not going to make a difference. I walked over to Coach Mason and just said, Coach, if I win this, can we get whatever we want on Sunday for food? Because every Sunday we used to get food catered in for the team. And he said, yeah, anything you want. And I said, okay. He said, as long as it's pizza. I said, no, we're doing JD Hoyt's. And so I went back out there, kicked it, ran around like a lunatic, like a soccer player, and just try and find the axe and jumped over the bench. And so, yeah, every year that comes up. But that was never my best game. I played well in that game, but Penn State that year was my best game by a long shot. We went in there, we won 20-14. I kicked 2 field goals. Opening kickoff was a surprise onside kick to myself, and we recovered it. I punted, and that was the first real time that we had done the rollout punt, which you see a lot of guys do today, which is that goal kick, soccer style, run out to the side. And that to me was probably my perfect game. Everything just was right. It was one of those days.
Was that at Penn State, that game?
That was at Penn State, yeah. It was a whiteout game too, which is still my favorite stadium that I've ever played at. It was one of those, that place I felt like it was reverse psychology because the people were so nice there. They're obviously, I've been to Iowa and I've got to sit on the sideline where I'm getting pennies thrown at my head and I just hearing the dinking off the helmets. And I've been to Wisconsin and those rivalries, but you go to Penn State and they just appreciated good football and good athletes, and I'm running off the field and they're like, hey, great game, have safe travels back. And in my mind, I'm like, they've done something to the plane. Like you're like, the people can't be that nice after you've just beat them. But yeah, that Happy Valley is literally Happy Valley. That was one of the best stadiums I've ever played in.
I assume that was probably a night game.
No, it was just a regular, I think it was maybe an 11 or a 3 o'clock game, or I don't remember the times, but
It's got to be pretty amazing.
Not,
oh, go ahead.
No, so it wasn't like a national game where it was 7 o'clock at night on ABC or anything like that. It was just a regular game.
Because I've seen like highlights of Penn State at night, and it lit up, all the fans in white, and
yeah.
But it's got to be something else being down on the field and seeing a scene like that in a stadium of this whiteout.
Yeah, I always say college. People say, what was it like to play in the NFL? College was way better because there is I think with the NFL, obviously there's fans from all over. The people are passionate, but there's something being attached to an institution and a college, and you've got the student section, and you're playing for a pride thing. And obviously now there's money involved, which that's another subject. But now there's like this thing of you're representing your school, you're representing your state or whatever it is. It's bigger. And so every stadium you walk into, playing at Michigan, the stadiums are bigger than the NFL. A lot of the NFL stadiums, 60, 70, 80,000 people. Michigan's got 110,000 people. It's just different. And you go to NFL stadiums and it's like blocks of fans, and it's not one sea of color. Whereas in college stadiums, it is a sea of color. If you've got Minnesota fans there, they are like the odd ones out, and they're in a corner, and they're not really. You're going to Penn State and it's a whiteout. The only people you can see are Minnesota fans, and there might be 20 of them in the fan, and typically their parents. And so it's that college atmosphere is just incredible. It's incredible.
I can't imagine walking into the stadium at the University of Michigan, 110,000.
Yeah. Yeah, it's more daunting visually. It was never Penn State had the best atmosphere because it was closer. Michigan's stadium tends to go more out and up, so a lot of the atmosphere is, to me, a little bit dead because it goes more upwards rather than towards the fans. But visually, it is really intimidating because you walk out of that tunnel and it almost looks like it's never ending. You feel like the weight of the world is on you. You see the millions and millions of fans from back home watching you on TV. Those are the same people that are in that stadium. It feels like it's really daunting. But again, once you get the game going, those people go away. You don't hear or see them. It's like you back on doing your thing, and you might have chats on the sideline with fans and people that come up with creative stuff to hurl abuse at you, which is quite funny. But college is different.
You brought up about at the University of Iowa over there. They were throwing pennies at you.
Yeah, that year I remember going there, and the historic pink locker room, supposed to give you that mind, like that sort of psychology thing again. And I just remember going down the stairs, which takes forever because it's a really skinny stairway down to the field. So you're all single file. So you imagine there's 100+ guys, walk-ons, everything from college. It seems like it takes forever to get down the stairs, and you finally get on the field. And as I'm walking on the field, one of the guys like, hey, listen, just so you know, wear your helmet the whole time. Because as a kicker, I'm wearing it for 5 to 10 seconds at a time, and then I get over the sideline, I take it off, put a hat on, and just chill out on the bench. They're like, no, you need to keep it on the whole time. And I said, why? I'm like, because they will throw pennies at you, and if it hits you in the head, it hurts. And sure enough, I had my helmet on. I just hear this dink, dink, and they're really close to you. And so they're purposely like trying to do it to get your attention. It's quite comical. I should have gone around and picked up all the pennies. I'd be a rich man. That would have been great.
All right, let's share with the listeners your journey after the NFL. And I know you're doing some coaching soccer and some of the highlights and kind of maybe challenges after the NFL.
Yeah, the life after the NFL, I think the common perception is retirement, live the dream, don't have to work again a day in your life, all that sort of thing, which I've experimented with. And mentally, it's really difficult. And it's taken me probably not until maybe a couple of years ago to realize you're always trying to replace, for me anyway, and I spoke to a lot of guys about this. I get to speak to them alumni weekends and a lot of close friends, and you all go through the same thing. There's very few guys that come out and have that next chapter and the next thing set up. There's always that question mark. And I think a lot of guys, including myself, you're trying to replace the feeling or the competitiveness or the nature of being an athlete, and you try and replace that with other things, and it's impossible. But you continue to try because you're chasing that. Well, I can't do that anymore. I'll just find the next thing that's going to be the same. And there is nothing the same. And that's difficult. I struggled with that for a long time. I waking up every day and saying, "Oh, I'd love to do this. I'm going to entertain this." And then the next day you jump onto something else because in your mind, you're like, "I really like the idea of going to do this as a career." And then when you sit and really evaluate it, you go, "Actually, no, I don't want to do that. I'm going to do this. Do I want a simple life and just go and get a job and just 9 to 5 it? Do I want to chase something that's more than that? Do I want to?" And it's been a real struggle. Coaching is something that's always been in my blood because of my dad. I've grown up around him and listening to him and listening to the way he communicates with people. And I've always been a big admirer of the way he deals with people, with kids, how he communicates. And I've always been obsessed, quite frankly, with finding out what makes people tick and then having a way of getting to them. And I think coaching does that for me, where I'm not coaching for money. I help a team locally. I don't take a penny from it. But having a relationship with those kids where you can find out what they're like. Do they need an arm around them? Do they need a kick up the backside? Do they need finding out what's going on at home? Understanding the way they think, maybe changing their perception on what the game's all about and giving them life lessons along the way. And that to me is the closest thing that I've got to feeling that sort of sense of reward from being an athlete. It's just being able to influence or try and give back to those kids. I told you the story the other week when we spoke about a message that you had said in high school. And for whatever reason, it was always something that stuck with me. And it's such a simple concept. And I remember at the time at 16, 17, 18, that was silly. As a kid, you're just an arrogant little cocky teenager, and you're just like, everybody laughed at it. But for whatever reason, I walked out of the room and that landed. And it was one of those things where there's so many people in my life from a coaching perspective that have done that. And you take all those things and my dad's always said the greatest coaches are the best thieves. You take from other people and you make it your own, and you put your own little twist on it, and then someone's going to steal it from you and they put their own twist on it, and that's how it evolves. And it's something that I am passionate about and I love doing. It gets me out of the house. I've got 3 boys of my own, and it gets me out of the house and gives me an opportunity to be active and also really try and make a difference in the kids' lives.
So who are some, going back maybe to high school, like I know Coach Sherwin would be one of them, and your
Yep.
father, but who are some influential people in your past or present time that really made an impact on you? So we want to just do some kind of shout outs to some people that were important in your life.
Obviously, my dad is number one. He's obviously my dad. He's incredible. I talk highly about him, not because he's my dad, but because what he's done for kids and the way he treats people. I think that comes from my papa, my grandfather, his dad. I'm a big actions guy. And maybe I learned this from my papa, but I love sitting back and not judging, giving information. I really like to assess, no matter what it is, whether it's within our own house where it's disagreements or whether it's conflict or whatever it is, I don't feel like I need to speak unless I have something to say. And if it is, it's more taken from all different angles as opposed to just jumping in and trying to control a situation. And that was what my papa was like. He commanded a room without saying anything. He was an incredible person. And I think at a young age, you don't really pick up on that stuff. But looking back, I think you do pick up on a lot of mannerisms, especially raising kids. I hear my dad's voice in my head. every single time I'm talking to my kids, it's like, my God, I'm literally repeating everything, same exact tone, everything that my dad said to me. So those two people for me are massive influences on me. Outside of family, Ben is a big part of my life, Ben Utek. And he's an actions guy. He's a guy that doesn't speak. Obviously he's a speaker, so he does speak a lot, but he's someone that I can have conversations to about the most difficult things, and it's not awkward. It's not, I don't feel ashamed. It's not, the thing is, it's easy for me, people that can give advice and stuff, but then not follow up on their actions, to me is not someone that I buy into. I was like that with kicking with my coaches when they said, Rhys, I think you should do this, you can do this. And I always used to say, if you can go and show me that, then I'll listen. But if you can't, then I'm not going to take advice from you. And that sounds arrogant, but that's not, I'm like that with everything that I've done. Ben's one of those action guys. He's a incredible man. He's a good family man. He's someone that when you're around him, he makes you better. And I think that's important, to surround yourself with people that make you better as people without you even knowing it. You just naturally feel like you're a good person when you're around. And that to me, it is a big deal. So those three people are big people in my life. My mum obviously is incredible, and she's your typical mum, will do still to this day everything and anything for me, and pretty special. And she's the person that I would go to for things that I probably wouldn't go to for other people, for that female touch. And then my wife is, yeah, she's incredible. I don't have a lot to say about her, but yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate that, you sharing that. I know you've had many coaches along the way. Kelly Sherwin at Eastview High School, and then Glenn Mason was your coach at the University of Minnesota, right?
Yep. Yeah, Glenn was a character, Coach Mason, should I say. He used to call me Winston, because the first day I came to training, he was obsessed with history, and Winston Churchill was his number one leader. Like, he took a lot of influence from him. And my first ever practice, he called field goal, and he couldn't remember my name because I'd only been there 10 minutes. But he knew I was English. So from that moment on, he called me Winston, and that stuck. So forevermore, I was known as Winston. He still calls me Winston to this day, every time I see him or speak to him. And he was there for me. He went to bat for me and, put his faith in me and really trusted in me. He gave some incredible speeches. He was a real player's coach. And what I mean by that, he cared about the guys. The results were important, but he cared more about the guys than the results, I think. And those type of coaches, to me, they land more for me than the guy who's super intense and all those things, and the shouting guys and win at all costs and stuff, which is important, but there's a human element to it. And I think Coach Mason was very much that guy. He really, stuck with me, and with the academic side of it, I know I was a pain in his backside, because he constantly had a conversation with me about, man, you need to go to class, you need to do this, you need to do that. But I think he just genuinely cared about me, and I gave him plenty of headaches over the years. I didn't make his life any easier than it should have been, but he's a big influence on me. And then Coach Fox as well, here at Carolina, when I had him, very similar style coach to Coach Mason. Big players guy, wanted to be in the locker room with you and have conversations and how's the family and all that kind of stuff. It was never, I've had coaches in the past where it was all about business. Those coaches that know it's all about life as well, I think, are big people for me.
Well, shout out to, in order, all those you mentioned, and then also Ben. Yeah. I know Utek, he's a good friend, and your parents, how they raised you, and just your thinking, and just the respect you have, and just your integrity. And then for sure, shout out to your wife. So that's really
she's
cool.
Incredible.
I appreciate it.
I don't have a lot to say about her, but she brings the emotion out. So that should be enough said.
Yeah, that's enough said. Appreciate that. All right, let's get to the final thoughts. A few final thoughts that you want to leave with men as they continue on their journey.
Such a loaded question. I think being a man is something that changes over time, what it means to be a man. I think when you're younger, those teen years going into your early 20s, it's about that sort of bravado and the arrogance and the toughness and all that sort of stuff. And, having kids and raising boys, it certainly changed your perspective a lot. I think ultimately just being yourself, whoever you are, just be yourself, just be authentic. I went through my career with people constantly trying to change. Once you made it, they all say, now you've made it, you need to do this. And ultimately, the name on the back of my shirt always said Lloyd. It was no one else's. And I think that was something that I could have had that longer career if I'd have done certain things differently. But the way I did it was me. That was ultimately the way I wanted to do it. It was never about anything else other than enjoying myself and really trying to enjoy the journey rather than the end product, because you just don't know when that is. Enjoying those moments and just being who you are as a person, what you stand for. It's okay to show emotion. It's okay to be vulnerable and just be caring. And my dad always says it takes zero effort to be nice to people. That's really such a true statement as you get older. And I love my life. It's a great journey, and I'm hoping it continues, and we'll see where it goes. But yeah, just be who you are. There's no special recipe to that, I don't think. I think it's just be the person you're supposed to be and just crack on with life and enjoy it.
I like what you shared about enjoy the journey. And we have different seasons in our life, or when you're single, when you have maybe you're dating, and then maybe you're married, and then you have kids, and just enjoy all those seasons.
Yeah, exactly. The kid thing is a different dynamic. You learn a lot about yourself. And then again, like you said, that journey can constantly changes. Like they're going to be this almost 16, 14 and 12 now. And they'll be out of the house as soon as I know it. And then it'll be back to me and my wife. And that's the next sort of stage. But just enjoy what you got going on at the minute and just be you, man. It's as simple as that.
I love that. Be you. That's right. Rhys, I want to thank you so much for your willingness to share. And where can the listeners find you and follow you?
I was a big social media guy because that's what my wife did for a profession. But now I'm on Facebook and Instagram and stuff. I have a Twitter account that I don't think I've been on for a few years. But yeah, I probably post more on Instagram. It's very little about me. It's always about the kids. It's a stereotypical dad, kids at sports and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, if you hear about me, hopefully it's typically good news, but you never know. So we'll see. But Instagram and Facebook, I'm on there.
Well, they're going to be hearing about you soon. So on this podcast.
On this podcast.
That's right.
On wherever you get your pods, that will be on there.
Oh, it's out on all the platforms. And
perfect.
All right, that's a wrap with Rhys Lloyd. And I want to thank you for being part of Men Pursuing More podcast.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Hey, thanks for listening to Men Pursuing More podcast. Don't forget to follow us at maupincoaching.com.